Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. As usual, we're going to be doing some special selections, and that's where one of you tell me exactly what I need to look at. I'm going to give a bit of analysis and a reaction on that selection. This one comes at us from Louis Zanoni, Tim Hecker's Live Room. This link includes the second part of the song, which is the following track on the album Virgins. So we're going to be checking out Live Room and Live Room Out. Combined, we're going to be looking at 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Let's see what Tim Hecker is up to. I don't even know who this is. I don't know if that's a band name or a person. So let's dive in. We got a bit of ambience and almost a bit of timelessness. Can't really find the repeating point of any phrase here. So I'm feeling 3 and 4 pulses, but I'm not really finding a pattern between them. I don't know if we're in 7 or if we're like doing a 3-3-4 thing. I was hoping that organ was going to give us some direction and just ducked out. It almost feels like the bells is in a different time signature than this ambient lower end stuff. Golly. Some real gritty tones coming in. It really does seem to be a series of disparate parts overlaid on top of each other in order to create a sense of chaos. But at times to say things profound. Maybe more so to allude to things profound. It really feels like it wants to come together right here. And it's just getting in its own way. have those very nice pads up there, providing a bit of strong direction in those pads, as well as a core emphasis, I would say, in an environmental idea. But none of the other instruments really want to line up with what it's trying to pull together. Moving into sort of a larger than life idea here. Really evolved into a bit of beauty here, no? Almost a bit of release. We had a ton of tension, and now we're seeing the resolution of that. S- Someone explain how the last third of that song had more tension to it than the chaos that came before it. Um, Dang. That song kind of hits hard, no? Did anybody else have that same experience I did? I was very lost for a long time, and then uh, and then the song hit some real emotional emotional chords within me. Wow. Um, all right, let's try to process this and get into the song a little bit. Lewis, I'm going to state this right now. I have no idea how I'm going to pull this all together. I'm a bit lost going into this analysis, but I hope that whatever conclusions I can draw as I talk my way through the processing uh, is what you were hoping to hear. Whether it's confirmation of why you enjoy this song or helps you find a new appreciation of it. But I'm going to let you know that right off the bat, going into this, I don't quite know where I'm going. This was a very unique experience to listen to. And yeah, with that said, let's get into this. So the song is split into two ideas, and I would say it's live room and live room out. I assume is where that split is going to be. Live room is the first 60% of this, which is utter chaos. We have all sorts of different sounds and tones coming in and out, none of them really aligning with each other rhythmically, melodically, harmonically, dissonantly, consonantly. There's just nothing that ties any of it together until we hit the outro, which I believe is live room out. It's what I would call it, anyways. It is the moment where a lot of that gives way for a very emotional, atmospheric part of the song that doesn't really have much to do with the first half on the surface, but I believe there are some underlying ideas that are reutilized and recontextualized into a rather harmonious outro. So I think I'm going to approach it in these two ideas and explore what they're doing and see if we can't figure out if there's a direction to all of this. Um, and I do want to state right off the bat that whether I find some connection or idea or thematic element in any of this, or I don't, it doesn't matter. I believe that this song is extremely important on an artistic level, even if I can't explain what that importance is. I was greatly affected by this song, even if it was only one portion of the song. Um, and it left me in a very interesting emotional state, uh, going through a lot of different uh, concepts. And it brought me to a lot of different places, even if the music itself doesn't really have a lot of interesting things going on. It's about the journey of it. And like I said, is really only the last section of the song that really hit me hard. But as I've mentioned many times in the past, contrast is important. And the last 3 minutes of this song is not as effective without the chaos and dissonance prior to it. It is not as great of a work of art on its own. It needs the contrast of the chaos prior for the consonance and order to make sense. So, let's dive in and see what we can see. Live Room is an interesting concoction of several recurring ideas that have nothing to do with each other. We have the bells that are doing a very interesting rhythmic idea that I never quite. Sorry. A bunch of rhythmic ideas that I never quite got the hang of. There's a pattern in there, but I never figured it out. Sometimes we would have one pattern, sometimes we would have another pattern. I never found the pattern of the patterns. There were two ideas though, and sometimes they did one and sometimes they did the other, and I never quite figured out when or why, which one was chosen. Um, but it was also the first thing that I remember hearing, and it's one of the things that I remember existing really up until that point when we shifted into the next idea. It was present through the entire portion of the song, um, the chaotic portion, and it is, I don't know, it's really embedded in my head, even if I don't remember the exact playing of it. I remember it. Um, then we have all sorts of odd tones and sounds and scraping sounds, and just odd tones that are not really musical, in the sense of traditional timbres. They almost take on an element of a sound effect rather than a musical tone. But as I've mentioned in the past, music, by definition, is a combination of sounds and silence. And they were definitely sounds. And they were surrounded by silence. So they are musical in that sense, even if they are not traditionally musical sounds. Um, and we had not just those random sound effects and tones, but also some other elements that were more musical in nature, even if they weren't fitting in again with anything around it. It I've likened this type of creation, this type of music, before to a group of musicians warming up. If you've ever been in a band or been around a band, especially larger bands, big bands or orchestras, before the performance is going or even before a rehearsal, everybody is warming their instruments up. They're getting themselves warmed up, they're getting the instruments warmed up. Um, Themselves, obviously, is the muscles. If you have a valved instrument, or you have a a woodwind and you just have tons of little things and you've got to be all over the instrument. You got to warm up pinkies, especially, at least for me. Pinkies are always like a weak finger for me, whether it's guitars or woodwinds or any of it. It's a weird finger for me. I don't have as much dexterity, so it's definitely something I would warm up. I imagine for string instruments you need to warm up your arms. You have a lot more movement in the arm rather than like a brass instrument. Well, a valved brass instrument, which is mostly fingers. Trombone, of course, you've got full arm movement on there as well. Percussion is very upper body. So you're warming up the muscles to be ready to play, especially once you get to much higher levels of musicianship. You really got to warm them up and get them ready for faster, more precise playing if that's necessary. But you're also warming up the instrument. A lot of instruments, especially aerophones, sound differently after they've been played for a little bit. I don't know how true this is for wood, But for metal instruments like the brass or a silver of a trumpet, um, or copper, I think they make copper trumpets. Anyways, they can use lots of different metals to create brass instruments. But the thing is that the metal will change the tone of the sound based on its temperature. Like I said, I don't know how true that is for all instruments, for all aerophones, but it is certainly true, at least in my limited experience of brass, um, is that instruments tend to be flatter the colder they are. So you need to warm it up before you tune it. Um, and then, of course, embouchure. This is all muscles that you need to warm up to. I don't know why I didn't include that with the arm and finger warming up, but it's more muscles that you need to warm up as well. You're not going to grab a trumpet cold and hit a double or triple C, depending on what your personal range is and how high of a note you can hit. But you're not just going to bust that out cold. You need to warm up your chops as well. So there's a lot of things that go into warming up, and I don't know why I went off on this tangent about what warming up is, but everybody's warming up in the room. Everybody's doing their own exercises, their own styles of warming up. Some people are warming up percussively, so you're going to get some, it might just be playing some pats on their laps or whatever, or practicing certain techniques on a practice pad. They might be performing it on the instrument themselves. Maybe they've got warm up stuff on the marimba. Maybe they have warm up stuff on the timpani. Your aerophones and your strings are all going to be playing warm up stuff as well. Most likely on the strings. Some of it is going to be, on the instruments. You have all these tones and sounds, and they're all chaotic. None of them are in line with each other. There's no point in finding a pulse, a time signature to this, because none of it is intended to be played together. They are all singular sounds that happen to be played at the same time as other singular sounds. And that is what I'm getting here. The interesting thing is, though, I don't know if it's because it is presented as a unified sound, as a song, or if it's because I was searching for meaning in this not song, presented as a song. But there is a strange profundity to that opening section. It really doesn't present itself until maybe 3 or 4 minutes into it. But I think it's especially when we get these very wide synthy pads going on that are trying so hard to create a foundation for all of this noise to present itself within. It really feels like these big synthy atmospheric sounds are trying to create a groundwork for everything to lock into place, for everything to make sense within. And there's a point where it almost feels like it, but everything is just slightly off. Maybe it's a meter thing. Maybe it's a tonal thing. Everything is kind of fitting into place, but just really not. And for whatever reason, approaching this section and sitting within this section, it creates the sense of profundity. Something is trying to be said and it can't break out of this lack of cohesion, lack of direction and purpose. And these ideas really started to fill me. And I think this is the part where I stopped talking about what was going on. There are very few songs that completely pull me out of that reactor idea of really focusing on everything and trying to hear all the different pieces, that orchestral listening that I've spoken about in the past, and trying to reconcile that against everything else and creating what would be about the basis of the analytical part of my videos. It's me taking everything in and trying to figure out what it means. There are very few songs that I end up turning off that part of my brain and just listening casually. That is not the purpose of these videos. I don't think that's necessarily why people watch them. I'm sure a lot of you really enjoy when I just feel the music. But a lot of my format is breaking it down and looking at what makes it tick. And I can't do that without the analytical side of my brain. But there are some songs that just engage with me on such a level that I find that portion of my brain broken down and forcing me to be a bit more vulnerable with the music, forcing me to really listen to, not listen to, listen with the music, to be a part of it. And that happened to me in the last half of this combo song, whatever you want to call it. And it took me places. It was a wild ride to so quickly shift gears. I don't know when that moment was, but there was definitely a click when I just stopped listening to the individual moments and trying to piece it together and just feeling it. And once that started, there was no moment of coming back. This song was like, all right, we've got you now. We're going to take you someplace. And the thing about the profundity of it, though, is that it really exists on that dual nature of the profound. The interesting thing, at least in the American English Dictionary for profound, is that it can mean both some sort of undeniable truth and also the lack of an undeniable truth. Let me pull this up real quick, because I don't feel like I'm properly explaining the duality of profundity. All right, so one definition is having intellectual depth and insight. So that could be that allusion to an undeniable truth, possibly, that I stated. However, another definition is... Wait, do I have a bad understanding of this? Merriam-Webster is not supporting what I thought this word meant. There's another entry that says something that is very deep. However, for some reason I had an understanding that profound also meant something that seemed deep, but not necessarily was. So we have this idea of depth, but you can also say something's profound when you don't know that it's actually super deep, but it sounds deep. Oh man, maybe I was just off on that, which is a bit... I mean, it happens. We're human. Yeah, apparently it just means depth, but it doesn't necessarily mean the idea of depth or the illusion of depth. Well, I learned something today. Anyways, now that we're off of that little tangent, that is definitely what I felt here. I felt like it wanted... There is something deep about what's being played here, but I don't necessarily know what that is. And it has these ideas of grandeur, but don't necessarily deliver on it. It's the perception of depth, which in itself is deep. We have a song that presents these large ideas in a manner that doesn't really say anything, and in that statement of being deep without depth, it is saying something grand about the concept of saying things that are grand without actually saying anything. And I don't know if that's tracking with anybody watching right now, but that is exactly how I felt listening to this. It took me on this wild ride of the a bunch of ideas trying to coalesce into a singular form and not really being able to do so. So falling back on a secondary plan of ditching all of that and going for something a little bit more simple in nature. And that is where the second half of the song comes in, which is there's a couple of ideas that are present in the chaos that show up again in that final section, but for the most part, it is a new part, a new section of the song that only utilizes a couple of the ideas. Some of those ideas, only part of them show up, and create something beautiful out of the chaos. But it feels to me so much like writing music. When I write music, I'm always creating multiple ideas. And I'm sure this is the same for most people. Maybe not, maybe not prodigies who take what they're hearing and put it on paper and they're done. I would wager most people who create anything, there's going to be stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor. And it's this chaos of ideas in your head, and you're putting them down on paper or trying them out in a DAW or noodling around with them, and you're really trying to make everything fit, and sometimes it just doesn't. So you reuse some of those ideas in a new context. You sort of gut your old ideas and use them piecemeal in a new idea. And it's something that I've even seen doing the composition jams, where I've done this as well, but somebody has posted something and said, this started out as something that I tried a year ago and never finished, and I took the melody line and turned it into this composition for the jam. And I'm like, yeah. First of all, that is the whole point of the composition jam. One is to get people out of their comfort zone, trying new things. But two is to finish music. That is one of my core things. The hardest thing that I think most people have being creative is finishing something. And I think having these short little jams that allow you to finish things, whether it's something new or something you've already created but never finished, it really helps to have that experience of finishing a project. Lots of people know how to start things, lots of people know how to drag things out, but not a lot of people have experience finishing things. And I think that's one of the strengths of jams in general. It's one of the reasons I created the comp jam, because I don't feel like there's a lot of spaces for that, much like video game jams or NaNoWriMo for writing, National Writers Month. I actually don't know what that stands for. NaNoWriMo. I don't remember. But these experience like 7-day game jams that allow you to create a game in 7 days, or NaNoWriMo, you have a month to write a story. They give you that experience of finishing it. You have a harsh deadline. You have to finish it to submit it. Even if it's not great, you get that experience of finishing things. And I feel so much of this process in this song. Now, I have no idea what Tim Hecker was going for. I really don't. But death of the author, the listener's perception and what they get out of it is just as valid an interpretation as what the intent was. And I absolutely love that this song took me on this journey of something that I feel all the time as a creative. Not everything I do sticks, and sometimes that sucks. But it's just really cool to experience that journey condensed into a 9-minute song, and to have a song speak to me on such a level. And there's even a bit of melancholy. Like I just said, it sucks to cut things, especially if it's a melody or a chord progression you just really love, but can't seem to fit into anything. None of your ideas are jamming with it. Um, and maybe it sits in a folder called Riff I Love, and you never get around to it. It's just a really nice bass lick that you created. Okay, this is getting a little personal. I have a folder of bass riffs that I've created that I've just never adapted into anything, couldn't fit in anything, but I love them too much to delete them. And it sucks to pull these things out of songs. And I feel that melancholy in the ending. There is definitely triumph in that final section. The song has come together, the piece is now complete, but things were lost along the way. It doesn't include everything that your grand visions had. It's still a great song, phenomenal even, but there are definitely aspects that you wanted in there that didn't make the cut. And sometimes it's hard to make peace with that. Anyways, those are my thoughts on, what is this, Tim Hecker's Live Room and Live Room Out. Like I said, I have no idea if that was his intentions, but that's what I got out of this one. Let me know your thoughts on this song. Let me know if you're getting what I'm dropping, or if nothing I said makes sense, or maybe you got a completely different experience out of it. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. When you're done commenting, there's a description box, and there is a link to Linktree, which is a fantastic resource. It has a menu with buttons and icons. I don't know why I say buttons so weird in that. No matter what I say, hey, it's a button over there. But when I'm doing this sign off, it's buttons. I don't know. Anyways, links for everything adjacent to the channel. Discord, Twitter, Patreon, special selections, all sorts of info is in there. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll have the next electronic song, and then I don't think we're doing another special selection. I think I have something different queued up for tomorrow. Normally we do 5 special selections, but I had some stuff I wanted to check out this week, like Monomyth, Animals as Leaders' new one we checked out on Monday. And then I think there's 2 more things. I think we're only doing 2 special selections this week. I don't know. Like I said, I'll be back though tomorrow, same time as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.